Nigerian Airlines, both passenger and cargo, are in dire straits. And that's the fact. The twin effects of the astronomical rise in the price of Jet A1, otherwise known as aviation fuel, and constant fluctuation in the exchange rate are factors that could send some airlines to their early graves. On the program, both cargo and passenger airline operators bear their minds and suggest solutions that can help alleviate the situation in country. Welcome to Aviation This Week on Channels Television. I'm Bukola Joe Uketumbi, and it's time to board. These are the regular fares on Nigerian routes now, whether it's Abuja to Akure or Lagos to Asaba. This situation has been brought about not just by the effects of the pandemic, but also by another crisis. Jet fuel prices soar following Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Aviation is the backbone of the economy, and right now, if Jet A1 fuel has been increased 10 times since the beginning of the year, making the airlines, making it very difficult for the airlines to operate and survive.
Firstly, the Naira has continued to depreciate, which obviously affects the price because it's actually calculated in USD. So that's had a negative effect. Secondly, prices generally across the world have continued to rise, so we've been hit twofold. One with the general price rise, and secondly the further currency devaluation. In terms of scarcity or availability, it's very difficult to source at the moment. Obviously, we have a number of suppliers, shortlisted suppliers, which we work with, but we cannot guarantee, or they cannot guarantee to us the regularity of supply. So it's been a very, very challenging couple of months. Lagos tends to be a little bit cheaper because the volume is here and the main infrastructure is here for bringing the commodity in. We're paying north of 650 a litre at the moment. In the outstations in the north, for example, and parts of the east, we're paying north of 680 naira a litre.
For consumers, the increasing cost of fuel means higher travel expenses as airlines pass on rising costs.
I am flying at a very, very high cost. I don't know how many more people can afford to be able to fly like they used to be. And then the roads are not safe. Okay, you want to give me an option to use the road to Abuja? I mean, everybody, my family will just tell me that, look, we would rather do a donation for you to fly than for you to go by road, because we don't want to keep praying and, our heart and our mouth before you get to where you are going.
And that one is understandable because it's a global thing. There's a shortage. The Russia-Ukraine invasion is also a part of it. So, I mean, I would want to give them some concession for that one. But then, cost of aviation, air jet one, cost of fuel generally, I think we should give them a concession for that one. But when things normalizes, I mean, when the prices of air fuel go back to normal, then they should be held liable if they choose to cancel flights unannounced or abruptly or causing delay.
Before now, local carriers are threatened to shut operations twice as operating costs soar out of control for the already fragile airlines. But the reduction of flight schedules has seen more passengers, but not enough to pay the bills.
We are stretched. I mean, our financials are really stretched at the moment with the current prices. If there's any further deterioration in the Naira or an increase in the general market prices, that's going to hurt the airlines. I mean, so far we've been able to control our costs better to offset some of that increased, fuel-related cost pressure. But at some stage, if it continues like this, we need to look at the fundamental setup of our cost base. And, that could range from our staff base, staff strength, number of frequencies, and possibly size of fleet. What we've done as a partial offset at the moment is we're flying less, but with fuller loads. So, we're a bit more tactical with our network and schedule at the moment.
So is there hope for the sector?
It's important that the government really have to step in, which I'm aware that they are doing something. We have to be sincere and honest with ourselves. We need to come together in this very difficult situation and see how we can cooperate. Even the banks should try and at this stage help. The parastatals too should come in at this stage and say, well, maybe landing and parking will be suspended or reduced at this stage. Something has to be done, because this is a free fall situation where it's like on a slippery slope.
Across the world, jet fuel cost has jumped about 30% to levels around 96% higher than they were a year ago, according to data from the International Air Transport Association. The effects go beyond Nigeria, as the Russia-Ukraine conflict has reduced overall demand for air travel, especially in Europe. According to experts, flight searches are currently 9% below expected seasonal levels, and European airfare costs jumped 10% month over month through the first week of March 2022. Airline stocks have also taken a hit over the past month, as United Airlines stock is down 27% in the period, while shares of American Airlines and Delta are falling roughly between 23% and 25% respectively. For Africa, a shortage of oil refineries across the sub-Saharan area, coupled with soaring crude prices because of the war in Ukraine, has left countries dangerously short of fuel supplies, disrupting airline operations.
We've been on the government's case for 3-4 months now. Despite their best efforts, we're still where we are today, where the price of fuel continues to increase. So if we were to sit down and wait for that, we'll probably not be around for much longer. We appreciate the efforts by the government, but it's not happening anytime fast or fast enough. So we have to find ways. We've been cutting our costs, trying to be more efficient, trying to be as thin as we can or as lean as we can. It's hectic. You have to find a way to ensure that your revenue is ahead of your operating costs. If your revenue goes below your operating costs for a sustained period, then you're on your way out. So we are doing everything possible to continue to derive revenue that pays for the operation. The problem is you're basically right now selling tickets to buy fuel. And there's so many other things you need to do as an airline. And to sustain all of those things, you really need to think out of the box, to be very smart with your costs, and to try to make sure that your revenue is ahead of your operating costs. The state is the shareholder. The airline runs itself. It's running. The state is not giving the airline money to run itself on a daily basis. The airline has run itself from start. So we're just like every other carrier. Where if we're unable to pay our way, we are going to be in deep trouble. All of us have to find the smartest sweet spot to get through this period. It's very important that an airline cannot run on the basis of, it's okay because the state is my shareholder, I can run to the state. The state doesn't even have money. It has more than enough of its own problems. To run to the state means that you're not serious. You have to work to weather this storm. It's a major storm. It's our biggest storm since. This is even getting worse than the lockdown of COVID, because it's sustained. The prices keep rising. So even if you calibrate it today, tomorrow there's 20 naira added. Tomorrow there's 20 naira added. So it's, I think it's stretching us. I know it's stretching the rest of the world, but I think our own is a little bit more hectic. We are kind of lucky. We have an efficient fleet. We don't burn as much fuel as everybody else. So those who don't have the kind of efficient fleet that we have. But nevertheless, it is still overly expensive, and we are struggling to keep up with our operating costs from our revenue. We have nowhere to run to. Let's even disabuse our minds from that. We have to run our business and run it successfully. So far, we're lucky we've been able to, but the way this thing is climbing, at some point, somebody will probably give up. I don't know. It's that bad. As a 76-year-old carrier, and it just tells you how very, 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 very delicate this industry is. Let me tell you why. Come for 73 to 74 years has been a profitable carrier. 73 to 74 straight consecutive years. It's a very efficient carrier. It's got a highly professional, efficient, capable, and competent organization, leadership and staff. It's got a smart and efficient fleet of aeroplanes. It's been managed very well. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 lockdown, where your aeroplanes were on the ground, and the lockdown in South Africa was for more than 6 months. And so to keep you keep paying for the fleet to be maintained while you're not flying and not getting any revenue. So whatever cash you have, it's very easy for you to finish it. It happened to so many airlines in the world, and it happened to Comair. And to come out of aircraft storage for a fleet of 25 to 30 aircraft is huge. So of course they came out with a few of the aeroplanes. Passenger loads did not climb as fast as in Nigeria, so things were going very slow. They were operating without making the kind of revenue to keep the operation going. And then eventually they ran out of cash, basically. And it turns out that it became very, very difficult for them to get additional funding because they were already heavily geared. And when it became clear that they couldn't get funding, they had to say to the market, well, since we can't get the funding to restart our operations, we have to liquidate and start trying to make sense of all the debts we have. And so that was the end of Comair. 76 years. It can happen to anybody, So it's a very delicate situation, and there's a competent group. Everybody's trying to learn. Liquidity is important, and right now the threat to liquidity is the fact that the cost of fuel alone is almost all of your revenue.
A pioneering British jet suit company is giving superhuman powers to the response of emergency services for search and rescue missions in remote locations in the north of England. Jamie Walsh, a Great North Air Ambulance paramedic, is the first of 3 trainees to fly the Gravity Industries jet suit in the steep hills of the Lake District just after 6 lessons.
Initially, when I was told about this, I thought, it's impossible. And then it starts to become possible, and then actually you start to see the trials of what's achievable. And now I feel like there is a place where this can benefit patients. Where normally I work through the day on a helicopter, obviously on days like today where we've got sort of low-lying mist and fog, the helicopter's going to struggle to sort of get there and get up there. And there's a bit of a gap between what the aircraft can achieve, getting us there in poor weather, and us getting there hiking up on foot, deploying from a car, and hopefully this gives us the opportunity to look at other options to get care to those patients quickly.
Jet suit inventor and developer Richard Browning flew a test route up Elvelyn, completing a 750 meters climb over a 2-kilometer distance in around 3 minutes 40 seconds.
If you think of the cost of a paramedic helicopter and all the crew involved and the maintenance and everything, actually this is a fraction of that. So actually I have no doubt that it has its place in the sort of portfolio of equipment that these kind of professionals have at their fingertips.
The 3D printed suit consists of 2 small turbines attached to each arm and a larger one mounted on the back. It can reach speeds in excess of 128 kilometers per hour and is technically capable of reaching an altitude of 12,000 feet. But for safety reasons is flown much lower. The next stage of the project is to get the paramedic flight skills to a level where real emergency assistance will arrive via jet suit paramedics. When we return after the break, News Flash is next.
Stakeholders in the aviation sector in Nigeria have converged on this hall for the National Aviation Conference organized by the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, which aims at advancing the frontiers of possibilities for safe, secure and profitable air transport. The conference is also to discuss the state of the aviation industry in Nigeria, particularly the prospects and challenges of the air transport industry, which, according to the Director General of FAN, has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic.
As of 2021, it was reported that Nigeria lost about $2.5 billion in MRO investments outside Nigeria to neighboring countries. Having such investments here would have created more employment opportunities for Nigerians, for revenue generation, and training of technical personnel for the maintenance of aircraft.
The Minister of Aviation, Mr. Adi Sirika, says the aviation sector in Nigeria is a gold mine with potentials waiting to be explored.
The roadmap being implemented by this government is such that every single airport will be owned and run by the private sector for more efficiency and, of course, value for money.
The Austrian ambassador to Nigeria, Thomas Schlesinger, has commended the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency for enhancing safety and economy of air navigation by partnering with Avcitel Communications Limited in the provision of world-class air traffic management systems. The Austrian ambassador made these remarks during a courtesy visit to the agency's headquarters in Abuja, where the acting managing director, Lawrence Puajok, praised Avcitel for providing NAMA with a very effective and efficient equipment that has greatly enhanced safety in the Nigerian airspace over the years. The ambassador was also taken on a tour of the NAMA facilities at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. British Airways is facing a summer of strikes after ground and cabin staff backed industrial action in a long-running dispute over pay. The announcement comes after the airline was forced to cancel over 100 flights operating to and from Heathrow. The Unite Union, which represents 16,000 BA workers, won a 97% majority in a ballot for potential industrial action. A spokesman for the airline described the result as disappointing, adding that the group remains committed to open and honest talks with trade unions over their concerns. Still in Europe, Ryanair Group Chief Executive Officer Michael O'Leary said the load factor, a measure of how well an airline is filling available seats, should be around 94% in June, almost reaching pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels.
Customers have been sitting at home for the last 2 years, locked up with COVID restrictions. A lot of customers have saved quite a lot of money over the last 2 years, and it's clear they all want to go on holidays this summer.
Meanwhile, Spanish cabin staff on Monday said they will go on strike 6 days in late June and early July. But O'Leary said any disruption caused by industrial action was likely to be tiny and inconsequential.
They're the last kind of sting of a dying wasp, being these two small unions in Spain who failed to deliver for their members over the last 2 years.
Ryanair's boss said he also welcomed the EU Parliament push for the EU carbon market to apply to all flights leaving EU airports.
There's no excuse why the richest people flying to and from Europe pay zero environmental taxes, and yet the ordinary European citizen and their families pay 100% of the environmental taxes when they account for less than 50% of the emissions.
The European Union is in the process of overhauling its climate policies as it seeks to cut net emissions by 55% by 2030 from 1990 levels, with a dozen laws to do that now passing through its lawmaking process. A regular flight linking South Africa's Guangzhou city with Turpan City in northwest China's autonomous region has started operations, which is expected to boost the tourism industry and business in Xinjiang. After the flight AQ1377 landed in Turpan Airport, passengers received a warm welcome featuring a performance presented by the locals. The flight stops by northwest China's Xi'an city, which makes it easier for people in China's interior regions to travel to Xinjiang. Operated by Nine Air Company Limited, the new route has specific arrangements on ticket prices and service to meet diversified travel demands of passengers and to facilitate people who travel among the three cities. South Korea has lifted its quarantine requirements for foreign arrivals without vaccination and has also started leaving aviation regulations imposed for international flights. However, the government will maintain the requirement of a negative PCR test result prior to entry and a PCR test within 72 hours after arrival. South Korean Prime Minister said any aviation regulations imposed at Incheon International Airport in the capital will be lifted to ensure that flights can operate in a timely manner, as current restrictions on flight and flight operation times have caused inconveniences such as lack of tickets and rising prices. Air cargo is indeed a trade facilitator that contributes to global economic development and creates millions of jobs. Air cargo transports over $6 trillion worth of goods, accounting for approximately 35% of world trade by value before the pandemic. During the pandemic, air cargo also saw a great climb owing to the absence of passenger movement. Some of the goods usually transferred by air include urgent and high-volume goods, intercontinental urgent mail, spare parts for land vehicles, spare parts for the aerospace industry, perishable food, materials for fairs and events, as well as plants. While these goods take advantage of speed, demand for air cargo fell in March 2022, according to IATA's data released in May. Some of the factors include China's zero-COVID policies and the Russia-Ukraine war, which weighed on demand and is threatening to become a longer-term hindrance.
What is happening in the world? Like China, they are in another phase of a lockdown, especially Guangzhou and Urumqi, where we have cargoes coming in, southern China. So they are under lockdown for a very long time, and up to now, the flights from there are still not coming as we speak. So that accounts for very low volume of cargo post-pandemic. And recent, the Russia-Ukraine war has also affected the world supply chain. And by implication, we also have a lower cargo volume coming to Nigeria as well.
Global air cargo demand measured in cargo ton kilometers fell by 5.2% in March compared with the same month in 2021. IATA reports while capacity was up 1.2% on the same basis, the airline body notes that this is a significant decline from the year-on-year increase seen in February. With Asia and Europe experiencing the largest falls, so how does this apply to the local sector here?
It has a direct impact on our businesses, because our business in terms of revenue we get here has to do with the volume of cargo that comes in. So when the cargo volumes are not much, automatically we have lower revenue from that sector. Any export from Nigeria to EU or all those countries affected by war, we won't be able to send it. No, I know basically some flights will not be able to go to all these war-torn areas. How it affects export might not be. So export is also based on demand. And some of Nigerians that live abroad, most of the export that goes from here are consumables by Nigerians that live in those countries. So some of them are back home, some haven't gone back to the destination. So it's either here or there, but exports will not be like that affected as imports, because most of them are household goods, not commercial per se.
When the purchasing power of people increase, they now begin to prioritize their expenses. And some of the things that are easily cut off is luxury items, entertainment, it will start going down. So they just prioritize on those things, and then people will conserve cash.
Commodities shipped by air do have high values per unit or are very time sensitive. The demand for air freight is limited by cost, typically priced 4 to 5 times that of road transport and 12 to 16 times that of sea transport. Away from cargo business operations, major operators also play in the ground handling sector, which refers to the wide range of services provided to facilitate an aircraft's flight, which also includes both customer service and ramp service functions. On the home stretch is a tribute to the first Nigerian pilot who flew in the first Nigerian registered 777 into the country, Captain Victor Igonu. Captain Igonu worked previously with Arike and with Air Peace, going through the ranks as head of pilot training, chief pilot, before rising to the position of director of flight operations. He suddenly died last week, and our heart goes out to his family. And it's on that note that Aviation this week comes to a close. See you next time, God willing. I'm Bukola Jo Oketumbi.